Hi, I'm Julia, and welcome to another episode of the English Talk community. I'm so glad you're here with me today because we're going to talk about something that every English learner faces at some point. It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or already at an intermediate level. You've probably had that moment when you wanted to speak. You had the words in your head, and then suddenly, nothing came out. Your mind went blank, your mouth refused to move, and all the confidence you had just disappeared. Sound familiar? You're not alone. That's why I'm here with you today. To talk honestly about what confidence in English really is, why it's hard, and how we can make it easier together. I want to begin by saying something really important. Speaking English with confidence does not mean speaking perfectly. It doesn't mean using complicated words or long sentences. In fact, it's the opposite. It's about being calm, clear, and comfortable with what you know. Confidence isn't a magical gift. It's something you can build every day, one step at a time. And the good news is, it doesn't take years of studying. You can start building real confidence right now, even with just a few minutes of focused listening and speaking practice. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like you're good at understanding English, but not good at speaking it? Maybe you can watch movies or read articles, but when someone talks to you, your brain freezes. That's such a common experience. The truth is, understanding and speaking use different parts of your brain, and they need different types of practice. That's why in today's episode, I'm going to focus on helping you connect those two skills, so that the English you understand becomes the English you can actually use in real life. Today, I'm inviting you to shift your mindset. We often think we have to know more vocabulary or perfect our grammar before we speak. But that belief creates pressure and delays progress. What really builds confidence is using what you already know, even if it's simple. Even if you only know a few phrases, you can still speak with confidence. It's not about how much you know, it's about how you use it. I want you to think about how children learn to speak. They don't wait until they understand every rule. They start by listening, repeating, and trying, even when they get things wrong. And slowly, they improve. Adults can do the same, but we often stop ourselves because we're afraid of making mistakes. I understand that fear. I've heard it from so many learners, people from Paris, Berlin, Lisbon, Madrid, Rome, people just like you. They all say the same thing. I understand English, but I can't speak it. And I always tell them the same thing. It's not true. You can speak. You just need to give yourself permission to try. Let's take a moment and imagine this together. You're sitting in a cafe and someone asks you a simple question in English. It could be, "Where are you from?" Or "What do you do?" In that moment, you know the answer. You've said it 100 times in your head. But still, your voice gets stuck. Your confidence fades. Why does that happen? It's not because you don't know the language. It's because your brain is trying to protect you from embarrassment. But guess what? You don't need protection. You need practice. That's where listening comes in. Listening is not just a passive skill. It's one of the most powerful tools you have for building speaking confidence. When you listen actively, you learn rhythm, pronunciation, and real expressions. More importantly, you learn how English sounds in everyday situations, and your brain starts to recognize patterns. The more you hear them, the easier it becomes to use them. That's why short daily listening sessions are so valuable. Even just 5 minutes a day can help you build the confidence to speak more freely. And when I say short, I mean really short. You don't need to listen to long lectures or study hours of content. Start with short conversations. Pay attention to the way people greet each other, ask for things, or respond when they don't understand. These are the moments that matter most when you're speaking English in the real world. Focus on phrases that you can actually use. Then, say them out loud. Repeat them. Get comfortable with them. You don't have to sound like a native speaker. You don't have to remove your accent. Your goal is to be understood, to connect, and to express yourself. That's real communication. And real confidence grows from real practice, not from perfect grammar. I want you to remember that every time you feel unsure. Now, let me ask you another question. What would happen if you started speaking before you felt ready? What if, instead of waiting for the perfect moment, you just tried using the words you already know? That small action can create a big shift. It's not about being fluent overnight. It's about showing up, using your voice, and allowing yourself to learn by doing. I've worked with learners who thought they'd never be able to speak confidently. People from all over the world. One person I remember clearly is Daniel, from Frankfurt. He was a software engineer who had studied English for years but never spoke it at work. He told me he felt like his mind just shut down whenever he had to speak. So we started with a challenge, just one sentence a day. He chose a short phrase from a podcast, repeated it out loud, and used it. The next time he spoke with a colleague. The first time, it felt scary. The second time, it was a little easier. By the end of the month, he was leading short calls in English, and he wasn't even thinking about grammar anymore. That's the kind of transformation I want for you, and it starts by taking simple steps. Listen, repeat, speak, every day, and do it with kindness to yourself. You are not behind. You are not slow. You're learning, and learning is powerful. Let's make this space a safe one. A place where you can grow without fear. A place where mistakes are welcome. Because every mistake is a sign that you are trying. You belong here. And I'm so proud of you for showing up today. That already says so much about your dedication. Before we move on, I want to ask you to support this community. If you found any value in this podcast, please take a moment to like this episode, follow our channel, and share it with someone who's also learning English. Your support helps us reach more learners around the world. And remember, this is not just a podcast, it's a community. You're not learning alone. We're doing this together. Take a deep breath. Let go of the pressure to be perfect. And let's enjoy the process of growing your confidence, one small, powerful step at a time. Many learners I talk to believe that confidence comes from speaking perfect English. They imagine that once they stop making mistakes, then they will feel ready to speak. But I want to tell you the truth. Confidence doesn't come from perfection. In fact, perfection often gets in the way. Confidence comes from using the English you already know, clearly, calmly, and with the intention to connect. It's not about having the right words all the time. It's about trusting yourself enough to use the words you have, even when they're not perfect. Think about this. Have you ever listened to someone speak English who makes small grammar mistakes but still sounds confident? You probably didn't even notice the mistakes. What you noticed was their tone, their expression, their willingness to speak without hesitation. That's what real confidence looks like. It's not about correctness. It's about clarity and connection. When you realize that you don't need to be perfect to be understood, something shifts inside you. You begin to relax. And that's when your fluency really starts to grow. I want to tell you about Marta, a fashion designer from Barcelona. When she first moved to London, she avoided speaking English as much as possible. She felt embarrassed by her accent and afraid of using the wrong verb tense. She thought people would judge her. One day, she had to give a short presentation at work. She practiced for hours, trying to memorize the perfect sentences. But when the moment came, she got nervous, forgot her lines, and ended up reading from her notes in a flat voice. After that, she decided to change her strategy. Instead of chasing perfection, she focused on learning useful phrases and practicing how to say them naturally. She stopped worrying about small grammar slips and started asking herself one question. Did they understand me? If the answer was yes, then that was success. And something amazing happened. People listened to her more. They asked questions. They smiled. Her confidence grew, not because she stopped making mistakes, but because she stopped letting those mistakes control her. This shift is important. If you believe you need to speak perfectly before you speak confidently, you'll never feel ready. You'll always be waiting. But confidence grows from action. The more you speak, the more your brain gets used to it. The more you use your voice, the more natural it feels. Confidence isn't the result of perfection. It's the result of repetition, effort, and letting go of fear. Mistakes are part of the process. In fact, your brain learns better when you make small mistakes and correct them in a real situation. That's how memory works. If you only study and never speak, your brain doesn't build the connections it needs for real communication. But when you try, even if you stumble, your brain starts to notice patterns. It learns faster when you take risks. That's why I always say, speak before you feel ready. That's where confidence begins. Let me give you another example. Lucas is a web developer from Lisbon. He's smart, funny, and speaks English quite well. But he told me he never joined meetings at work because he was, afraid of saying something wrong in front of his colleagues. One day, his manager asked him a question directly. Lucas panicked, but he forced himself to answer. He kept it simple. "I think we need to check the design again." That's it, nothing complex. But after the meeting, his coworker sent him a message and said, "Thanks for your idea. It helped a lot." That one sentence gave him the confidence to speak up more often. And soon he was leading part of the discussion. Lucas didn't wait to speak. Perfectly. He used what he knew. And that's what I want you to do too. Start with short phrases. Don't worry if your sentence isn't perfect. Focus on the message. Speak slowly if you need to. Use simple words. The goal is to communicate, not to impress. The more you do it, the more you'll realize that people care more about your ideas than your grammar. One helpful strategy is to prepare phrases that you can use in many situations. These are what I call confidence builders. For example, if you're not sure how to answer, you can say, "Let me think for a second." Or if you make a mistake, you can smile and say, "Wait, I mean." These short expressions give you time to breathe, to regroup, and to continue the conversation with confidence. You're not hiding your learning process. You're owning it. And that's powerful. The truth is, no one expects you to speak perfect English, except maybe you. Most native speakers don't even speak perfect English. They use contractions, informal words, unfinished sentences. They repeat themselves. They say "you know" and "like" all the time. Language is messy and human. It's about the message, the tone, the connection. So if you're aiming for confidence, aim to be real, not perfect. I want you to think about a situation where you didn't speak because you were afraid of making a mistake. Maybe it was at work or in a shop or at a social event. What would have happened if you had said something simple instead of staying silent? Even a small response like, "I'm not sure," or "Can you repeat that?" can be a victory. Every time you say something, no matter how small, you're telling your brain, "I can do this." There's something else I want to remind you. Your accent is not a problem. Your background, your voice, your way of speaking, it's part of who you are. Don't try to erase it. Don't try to sound like someone else. When you speak with confidence, your accent becomes a part of your charm, not a barrier. People are drawn to authenticity. They connect with people who speak with heart, not just with perfect grammar. Confidence also grows when you speak in low-pressure situations. You don't need a big audience to practice. Talk to yourself in English. Describe what you're doing. Practice small conversations in your mind. Listen to short English clips and repeat what you hear. Record yourself and listen back. You might be surprised at how much you already know, and you'll start to hear the growth in your voice. 1. More thing I want to share with you is that confidence is not a constant feeling. It's not something you reach and then keep forever. It comes and goes. Some days you'll feel brave, and other days you'll feel unsure. That's okay. What matters is that you keep showing up, keep practicing, keep speaking, even when your voice shakes, even when you make mistakes, because that's how confidence is built, not in silence, but in action. You already have everything you need to become a confident speaker. Not someday, today. Not after you learn more grammar, but with what you know right now. Use it, speak it, share it. Confidence is already inside you. You just need to let it out. I want to tell you about someone I worked with not long ago. Her name is Elena, and she lives in Madrid. She's a graphic designer and a very talented one. For a long time, Elena had been dreaming of working with international clients. She knew that speaking English confidently would open up more opportunities for her career. So, when she finally got invited for a job interview at a design agency in Amsterdam, she was both excited and nervous. She had studied English at school, and she had been reviewing common interview questions on her own. She wrote down the answers, practiced in front of the mirror, and even recorded herself speaking. She really believed she was ready. But when the interview started, something unexpected happened. As soon as the first question came, "Can you tell us a bit about yourself?" Her mind went blank. Completely blank. The words she had prepared disappeared. Her voice began to shake, her sentences were broken, and she couldn't remember simple phrases she had used 100 times before. She felt her confidence drop instantly. The more she tried to fix it during the call, the more nervous she became. After 20 minutes, the interview ended and Elena was devastated. She told me later that she had never felt so disappointed in herself. That's a moment many of us know too well. You prepare, you practice, but then real life happens, and it's different. The pressure changes everything. Elena knew the language, but in that moment, her brain went into panic mode. And that's the thing. When we only prepare by memorizing, we don't prepare for real conversations. Real English is not a list of perfect answers. It's dynamic, emotional, and unexpected. And to feel confident, we have to practice in ways that reflect that reality. After the interview, Elena didn't give up. She took a deep breath, and instead of feeling sorry for herself, she started asking deeper questions. What exactly went wrong? Why did her mind freeze? She realized that she had spent so much time reading and writing in English, but not enough time listening and speaking. Her mouth wasn't used to forming English sounds quickly. Her ears weren't used to catching natural speech. And most importantly, she had been practicing in a way that felt safe, but not real. That's when she decided to change her routine completely. She chose a new approach. Short, focused listening every day, with the goal of repeating what she heard out loud. Nothing long or complicated, just 10-minute dialogues about everyday topics. Things like job interviews, casual conversations, and workplace situations. She would listen once to understand the context, then again to catch the structure of the sentences, and then she'd pause and repeat each phrase until it felt natural in her mouth. She did this every day, even while brushing her teeth or walking to the store. It became a habit. And something started to shift. After just a few days, she noticed that she could speak with less hesitation. She didn't need to think so hard about every word. She started using common expressions naturally, without translation. Her voice became more stable. She even noticed a difference in how she felt about English. Less fear, more excitement. Her brain was adapting. It wasn't about learning new words. It was about becoming comfortable with the words she already knew. 2 weeks later, Elena got invited to another interview. This time, it was a remote call with a small agency based in Dublin. She was still nervous, of course, but something was different. Her heart was beating fast, but her mind didn't freeze. The interviewer asked, "Tell me about a project you're proud of." And she answered naturally. She used simple language. She paused when she needed. And when she didn't understand one question, she calmly said, "Could you repeat that, please?" Without any shame. The conversation flowed. She smiled. She felt in control. After the interview, she called me and said, "Julia, I did it. I didn't feel like a student. I felt like myself." And I knew exactly what she meant. That feeling, being able to express yourself, even in a second language without panic, is powerful. And it doesn't come from perfection. It comes from practice. From showing up every day and training your ears and your voice to work together. Elena didn't need more grammar books. She needed connection between what she heard and what she said, between her thoughts and her voice. That's why I always say, speak the English you know. Repeat real phrases you hear in real situations. Don't aim for complicated answers. Aim for clear, calm communication. That's what people respond to. That's what builds your confidence. You don't need to memorize every answer. You need to prepare your voice and your mind to be flexible and ready. Elena's story is a reminder that confidence is not a switch you turn on. It's something you grow, step by step. And sometimes it takes a hard moment, like a failed interview, to show us what needs to change. But when you use that experience as motivation to try something new, you grow faster than you ever thought possible. Elena didn't let fear win. She changed her method and her mindset, and that made all the difference. One of the biggest misunderstandings I hear from English learners is the belief that more time always means more progress. People often say to me, "Julia, I don't have time to listen to English for hours every day." And I always smile, because here's the truth. You don't need hours. You don't need long, complicated lessons. What you really need is short, focused listening sessions. Just 10 minutes a day can make a real difference if you do it with purpose and attention. Think of it this way. If you try to listen to a 1-hour podcast while doing the dishes or walking through a noisy street, your brain is doing too many things at once. You might catch a few words here and there, but you're not really learning anything deeply. But if you sit down for 5 or 10 minutes and listen to a short conversation, something very different happens. Your brain becomes fully engaged. You notice the rhythm of the sentences. You hear how the words connect. And most importantly, you can repeat what you hear right away while it's still fresh. This type of practice is powerful because it builds something we often forget about: automatic response. When you listen to key phrases every day and say them out loud, you train your brain and your mouth to work together. You're not just learning with your eyes or your ears, you're training your speaking muscles, your memory, and your confidence all at once. That's why these short sessions are so effective. They're targeted. They focus on one small skill. And they're easy to repeat, again and again. Let me share with you what I usually recommend. Start by choosing a topic, something simple and useful. For example, introducing yourself, ordering food, asking for help, or talking about your job. Find a short audio clip or a video, something under 2 minutes if possible, where that situation is used in real English. Listen to it once just to understand what's going on. Then listen again, and this time, pause after each sentence. Repeat the sentence out loud. Focus on how it sounds. Don't worry if you don't say it perfectly. Just try to match the rhythm, the tone, and the pronunciation. Then, listen a third time, and this time try to repeat the sentence before the speaker finishes it. This exercise helps you think faster in English. Your brain begins to predict what comes next, and that's what fluent speakers do. They don't translate in their heads, they just respond naturally. This is how you build that habit, slowly, gently, with short, focused listening. I remember one learner, Sophia, from Rome, who followed this method. She was working in customer service for an international company, and she told me she didn't have time for long English lessons after her shifts. So we made a plan together. She chose one short conversation each day, something she could listen to during her lunch break. One day, it was about greeting a customer. The next day, it was about solving a problem politely. Each day, she listened 3 times and practiced saying the key phrases out loud. After a week, she noticed that her responses on the phone were smoother. She wasn't thinking as much. She was just speaking. That's the result of focused repetition. And here's something else. When you do short sessions every day, your brain stays motivated. Long lessons can be overwhelming, and it's easy to give up. But 10 minutes? Everyone can find 10 minutes. You can do it while waiting for your coffee, during a short walk, or right before bed. And because the sessions are short, you're more likely to repeat them. Repetition is where the magic happens. The first time you listen, it's new. The second time, it feels familiar. By the third or fourth time, your brain starts to accept it as something you own. There's also a psychological benefit. When you finish a short session, you feel successful. You feel like you accomplished something. That feeling gives you confidence. It tells your brain, I'm getting better. And the more you feel that way, the more likely you are to continue. That's how small habits grow into big results. Let's talk about what you should listen to. Not every English audio is helpful. If the content is too fast or too difficult, you'll feel lost. If it's too simple, you'll get bored. The best material is just a little above your current level. It challenges you, but it doesn't overwhelm you. Look for everyday English, real conversations, not textbook dialogues. Pay attention to how people start and end sentences. Notice the little words they use to sound natural, like actually, maybe, kind of, or, you know. These are the details that make you sound more fluent. You don't need a big vocabulary to speak confidently. You need the right words, in the right situations, practiced in the right way. That's why I love short listening sessions. They give you a space to focus on exactly that. You're not just hearing English, you're learning how to use it, how to respond, how to be a part of real communication. Sometimes people ask me, should I write down what I am here? And the answer is, only if it helps you. Writing can be useful, especially if you want to remember a phrase, but don't turn your listening practice into a grammar lesson. The goal here is not analysis. It's fluency. It's repetition. It's getting the sound of English into your ears and your mouth until it feels easy to use. I've seen so many learners transform their confidence just by following this simple routine. You don't need fancy tools or expensive courses. You just need your phone, a quiet space, and your own voice. 10 minutes a day, a short conversation, a few repeated phrases. That's it. And if you do this consistently, you'll begin to feel the change. Not just in your listening, but in your speaking. You'll pause less, you'll respond faster, you'll start to enjoy speaking instead of fearing it. I know it sounds simple, and maybe too simple, but that's the point. Simplicity works. It makes learning sustainable. It makes practice enjoyable. And when learning feels good, it becomes a natural part of your life. That's what we're aiming for. Not perfection, not pressure, just progress, one short session at a time. Let me introduce you to Marco, someone I admire deeply for his quiet determination and the way he completely transformed his relationship with English. Marco lives in Milan and works at the front desk of a hotel in the center of the city. Every day, he meets guests from all over the world, tourists, business travelers, families on vacation. As you can now imagine, English is essential in his job. But when I first met Marco, he was doing something very common among learners, avoiding conversation as much as possible. Marco told me he could understand most of what the guests said. That wasn't the problem. He could follow instructions, recognize questions, and even explain basic things like check-in times or Wi-Fi passwords. But when it came to having a longer conversation, when someone asked for recommendations or started small talk, he panicked. He would smile, nod politely, and find a way to end the conversation quickly. He didn't want to sound awkward, and he was afraid of not knowing the right words. So, instead of speaking, he stayed quiet. He felt stuck between understanding and speaking, just like so many learners do. The interesting part is that Marco didn't lack vocabulary. He had studied English at school, taken online courses, and even passed an intermediate-level test. But none of that helped him when he had to speak spontaneously. What was missing was practice that felt real, practice that trained his ear and his mouth together. So he started working on a routine that he could do without changing his schedule too much. He didn't have extra time for long lessons, but he had one important window every day: his commute to and from work. Marco began using that time to listen to 5-minute English podcasts. He chose simple, everyday topics: greetings, asking for directions, making suggestions, giving opinions. He listened once on the way to work, and then again on the way home. But this time, he didn't just listen. He repeated the phrases out loud. He paused the audio and copied the pronunciation, the rhythm, and the intonation. At first, he felt a little silly doing this on the street or on the metro, but he found small corners or quiet spots where he could practice softly to himself. And slowly, something began to change. After just a few days, Marco noticed that he was remembering phrases without effort. Expressions like, "let me think," or "you might enjoy," started coming naturally. One morning, a guest from Canada asked him, "Do you know a good place for dinner nearby?" It was the kind of question that used to make Marco nervous. But this time, he felt ready. Without planning, he said, "Yes, I do. There's a great place just 5 minutes from here. It's a local restaurant with traditional Milanese food. I think you'll really like it." He even gave directions and suggested a few dishes. When the guest thanked him and smiled, Marco felt something shift inside. That small win changed everything. It wasn't a long conversation. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. And it came from practice, not from studying grammar, but from listening and repeating until the words felt familiar. After that, Marco became more confident. He started answering more questions. He even initiated small conversations, something he had never done before. And the more he spoke, the more he realized that fluency wasn't about knowing every word. It was about being ready to use the ones he already had. What worked for Marco was consistency. 5 minutes a day, every day. It didn't seem like much, but over time, it made a big impact. His brain began to recognize patterns. His mouth started to move more easily in English. And because he was practicing real-life phrases, he could use them right away at work. That kind of progress builds confidence naturally. You don't need to wait until you're fluent to speak. You just need enough tools to handle one situation at a time. I asked Marco once what helped him the most. He said, "Repeating phrases out loud. I stopped thinking about the grammar and just focused on how it sounded." That shift from analysis to experience is so important. When you stop trying to control every sentence and start trusting your voice, your fluency grows much faster. Marco didn't aim for perfection. He aimed for progress, and that made all the difference. There was another moment that showed just how far he had come. A guest from London was having trouble with a taxi booking. The driver didn't arrive, and the guest was getting frustrated. Marco stepped in, made a phone call, explained the situation clearly, and helped resolve the issue. The guest later wrote a positive review online and mentioned Marco by name, saying how professional and helpful he had been. That review was printed and placed on the hotel's staff board. Marco told me that seeing his name there made him feel more confident than any English certificate ever had. Confidence doesn't come from studying silently. It comes from using your voice, one phrase at a time. Marco's story reminds me that real improvement happens in small daily moments. You don't need perfect grammar. You don't need hours of free time. You just need a simple plan and the courage to speak up when the opportunity comes. And when you do, you might discover that the words were there all along. You just needed to give them a chance to come out. When we talk about listening in English, most learners think about understanding words. That's natural. For years, you've probably been taught to listen for meaning, translate in your head, recognize vocabulary, identify key information. And yes, that's important. But if you want to become a confident speaker, you need to listen differently. You need to listen like a speaker, not like a student. That means shifting your focus from just understanding to really noticing how English works when it's spoken naturally. When I say listen like a speaker, I mean listening with the goal of using what you hear, not just recognizing it. If you only focus on meaning, your brain stays in passive mode. You understand what's being said, but when it's your turn to speak, you still hesitate. But when you start listening actively, for rhythm, intonation, sentence structure, and conversational flow, you train your brain to respond like a speaker. You hear how people begin their sentences, how they soften their opinions, how they change topics. This kind of listening gives you tools you can use immediately. Let's think about how a native speaker might respond in a casual conversation. Someone asks, "What do you think about this idea?" A student might try to form a complete, grammatically perfect answer in their head before responding. But a speaker who has been listening actively might say, "Well, to be honest, I think it depends." Or, I haven't really thought about that, but maybe these aren't complex sentences, but they're real, natural, and useful. And you only learn how to say things like that by hearing them again and again in real situations and paying attention to how they are used. It's not just about vocabulary. It's about function. Phrases like, "You know what I mean?" "Let me see," or "I guess so," serve very specific roles in conversation. They help you sound natural, keep the conversation going, and give you time to think. If you only listen for content, you miss these valuable expressions. But if you listen with a speaker's mindset, you'll start collecting these small but powerful tools without even realizing it. I remember speaking with Andre, a project manager from Lisbon, who told me he listened to English podcasts every day but still didn't feel confident speaking. I asked him what he focused on while listening. He said, "Just trying to understand everything." That was the problem. Understanding is important, of course, but it's not enough. I encouraged him to choose a short conversation and listen with new ears, not just for the message, but for the style. How did the speakers start their answers? Did they pause before speaking? What kind of words did they use to agree, disagree, or show uncertainty? Andre started doing that, just 10 minutes a day. Within 2 weeks, he told me he had started using phrases like, "That makes sense," and "I'm not sure, but maybe," at work. These phrases came out naturally because he had heard them used in context. He wasn't memorizing them. He was absorbing them, just like we do in our first language. That's what happens when you listen like a speaker. It's also helpful to notice how speakers pause. In written English, everything is clear and organized. But in spoken English, people think while they speak. They pause, they restart, they say, and you know. These pauses aren't mistakes. They're part of real communication. When you start noticing these patterns, you'll feel less pressure to speak perfectly. You'll understand that it's okay to pause, to take your time, and to respond in a natural way. That's what fluent speakers do every day. Try this next time you listen to English. Don't just ask, "What does this mean?" Ask, "How did they say that? Did they use rising or falling intonation? Did they speak quickly or slowly? Did they repeat a word for emphasis?" These small details help you understand not just the language, but the feeling behind the words. And when you feel the rhythm of English, you start to speak with more confidence and flow. Another thing to notice is how speakers interact with each other. Listen for how they interrupt politely, how they show they're listening, how they take turns. Expressions like right, exactly, or I see what you mean show agreement. Phrases like, sorry to interrupt, but, or can I add something here, are useful when you want to join a conversation. These aren't things you learn from a textbook. You learn them from listening closely to how real people talk and practicing using those same tools. I always suggest repeating these expressions out loud. Even if it's just a few minutes a day, saying them helps your brain store them in a way that makes speaking easier. You're not just hearing the words, you're feeling them in your mouth, getting used to their sound and rhythm. And when you need them, they'll come out naturally, without thinking. A lot of learners tell me they feel pressure to understand every single word, and I understand that pressure. But let me tell you something important. Native speakers don't always understand every word either. We listen for meaning, for tone, for keywords. So when you're listening, don't worry if you miss a few details. Focus on the bigger picture. Focus on how people are communicating, not just what they're saying. That's the key to becoming a better speaker. I also recommend choosing audio that reflects real life. Conversations, not just scripted lessons. Interviews, casual dialogues, and podcasts with two speakers are great for this. They show you how people really talk, how they interrupt, laugh, hesitate, or change their minds. These are all important parts of communication that you can only learn by listening with attention. Think about how children learn language. They don't start with grammar rules. They start by listening to how people around them speak. They hear the same phrases again and again. Then they try to copy them. They make mistakes, they get corrected, and they keep trying. That process works for adults too. But we need to let go of the idea that understanding everything is the goal. The real goal is to listen in a way that helps us speak. If you start listening like a speaker, you'll begin to notice something wonderful. You'll catch phrases you can use, you'll hear yourself responding faster, you'll start speaking more naturally, with less stress, and most importantly, you'll feel more connected to the language, not just as a learner, but as someone who uses English in real life. That's when your confidence really begins to grow. Not from knowing more words, but from hearing the language the way it's truly spoken, and learning to speak it that way too. One of the most powerful ways to feel more confident in English conversations is to have a few reliable phrases ready. Phrases that don't just help you communicate, but also help you manage your emotions while you speak. Call them confidence phrases. They are short, simple expressions that help you stay calm, stay in control, and show the other person that you're present in the conversation, even if you're not sure what to say next. When you know how to create that little space for yourself during a conversation, everything feels easier. You're no longer trying to rush or force the perfect sentence. Instead, you're navigating the moment, step by step, with confidence. I want to be clear about one thing. You don't need big words or complex grammar to sound confident. In fact, the opposite is often true. Simple language, spoken clearly and calmly, has more impact than long, complicated sentences. The goal is not to impress. The goal is to connect. And to connect well, you need tools that support your thinking and give your brain a chance to catch up while you speak. Let's start with one of the most helpful phrases you can use. Let me think. It's a short pause, but it sends a strong message. It shows the other person that you're considering your answer, that you care about your response. It also gives your brain a few seconds to organize your thoughts. Native speakers use this phrase all the time. They don't rush to answer everything instantly. They give themselves permission to pause, and you can do that too. Another phrase I love is, "Can I say that again?" Sometimes when you start speaking, you realize you're going in the wrong direction. Maybe your sentence is getting too long or too confusing. It's perfectly okay to stop, breathe, and restart. When you say, "Can I say that again?" You're showing that you're aware and engaged. You're not giving up. You're resetting. And that small decision builds confidence because it reminds you that you are in control of your voice. You can also use phrases like, "I'm not sure how to say this," or "I don't know the exact word, but..." These are honest human expressions. They tell the other person that you're working through your thoughts. And that's a strength, not a weakness. No one expects you to speak perfectly all the time, not even native speakers. What people really value is effort, clarity, and authenticity. Let me give you a few more confidence-building phrases you can keep in your pocket. For example, "Could you repeat that, please?" "Let me check my words for a second." "What I'm trying to say is..." "That's a good question. I think..." Each of these phrases does something very important. They buy you time. They show politeness. They invite connection. And they allow you to continue speaking without pressure. You're not stopping the conversation. You're guiding it. And that's what confident speakers do. I remember talking to Lena, a marketing assistant from Hamburg, who told me she always got nervous during meetings because she couldn't find the right words fast enough. She said she often stayed silent even when she had ideas to share. So I gave her a few phrases like, "Can I add something here?" and "I'll try," to explain it simply. She started using them in small moments, and it made a big difference. Instead of freezing, she had a bridge, a way to enter the conversation smoothly. And over time, those small entries led to bigger contributions. She didn't become a different person. She just found a new way to participate, using language that supported her confidence. The beauty of these phrases is that they're universal. You can use them in professional settings, casual conversations, online calls, or face-to-face interactions. They are gentle tools that support your communication without adding pressure. And once you practice them enough, they become part of your natural rhythm. You won't even need to think about them. They'll just be there, ready when you need them. Another powerful phrase is, "Can you give me a second?" It's so simple, but it works wonders. When your brain needs a short break to organize your ideas, this phrase gives you that space. You stay in the conversation. You don't disappear. And you don't feel rushed. You stay present and you stay in control. That feeling of control is where confidence starts to grow. One thing I often tell learners is that confidence doesn't mean speaking without fear. It means learning how to manage that fear, how to work with it. These phrases help you do exactly that. They create a safety net for your speech. They remind you that you don't need to know everything, and that you can still communicate clearly while thinking on your feet. I also suggest practicing these phrases out loud, not just reading them. When you say them with your own voice, they become more natural. Try using them in low-pressure situations, like speaking to yourself while doing daily tasks. Say things like, "Let me think," or "What I'm trying to say is," even if there's no one listening. You're training your brain and your mouth to work together, and that practice adds up quickly. There's another benefit I want to mention. When you use these kinds of phrases, the person you're speaking to often becomes more relaxed too. Your calmness sets the tone. They listen more patiently. They wait for your answer. And in that space, a real conversation can happen. You're not just speaking. You're creating a moment of mutual understanding. So the next time you feel that moment of panic, the pressure to say something quickly or perfectly, pause, breathe, and reach for one of your confidence phrases. Say, "That's interesting, let me think." Or, "I'm not sure, but I can try to explain." You're not apologizing for your English. You're showing your ability to handle the moment with care and clarity. That's what true confidence looks like. You don't need hundreds of phrases, just a few that feel comfortable, honest, and supportive. Repeat them, use them, and trust them. They will help you stay calm in difficult moments, and they will remind you that communication is not about perfection. It's about connection. And when you use your voice with intention and clarity, people listen. Even if your grammar isn't perfect, even if you pause often, even if you make mistakes, what matters most is that you stay present and keep going. That's where your real confidence will begin to grow. I want to share a story about someone who made a simple change in her preparation that had a huge impact. Her name is Anna, and she's a university student in Lisbon. She's studying marketing, and like many students in international programs, she often needs to speak English during class. Most of the time, that just means joining group discussions or asking questions. But one day, her professor announced that each student would have to give a short solo presentation in English. It would only be 5 minutes, but they would need to stand in front of the class and speak clearly, without notes. For Anna, that was terrifying. Now, Anna wasn't new to English. In fact, her vocabulary was strong. She had spent years reading articles, watching shows, and even writing essays in English. But speaking in front of people, that was different. She told me she was afraid that her mind would go blank the moment she stood up. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because she feared the pressure. That moment of silence when everyone's looking at you, waiting for your voice, that was her nightmare. She worried about forgetting words, making mistakes, or sounding awkward. So she came to me with a question. How do I prepare for this without memorizing every single sentence? I loved that question because it showed that Anna already understood something important. Memorizing everything makes you feel safe, but it also locks you in. If you forget one word, you feel like the whole thing falls apart. So instead of memorizing, we focused on structure and on using real listening as a way to build confidence. We started by choosing videos of short English presentations, student talks, TEDx speeches, business pitches. Not long ones, just 2 or 3 minutes each. The key was to find examples where people were speaking clearly and naturally, using language that Anna could understand and repeat. We weren't looking for perfect English. We were looking for useful patterns. How speakers opened their presentations, how they moved from one point to the next, and how they finished. Anna began listening to one video per day. She focused on phrases like, "Let me begin by explaining," or "The next point I want to make is," or "To summarize what I've said." These weren't advanced expressions, but they were powerful tools. They gave her structure. They made her speech feel organized. And most importantly, they gave her time to breathe while she spoke. Instead of rushing from idea to idea, she had space. She didn't just listen. She repeated everything out loud. After hearing a phrase, she paused the video and said it herself. She practiced the transitions again and again until they felt natural. Then she applied them to her own topic. Her presentation was about a marketing campaign for a local brand, and she used the exact same transitions she had heard in the videos. First, I'll give you a bit of background. Next, I'll show you how the campaign was designed. And finally, let me share the results and what we learned. With those clear phrases, her ideas were easier to deliver and easier to follow. The day of the presentation arrived. Anna felt nervous, of course, but she also felt prepared in a new way. She wasn't trying to remember a script. She was moving through a path she had practiced many times. When she got up to speak, her voice was steady. Her sentences were simple, but confident. She used the same structure she had practiced. She even smiled and made eye contact with her classmates. And at the end, she closed with, "Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them." A phrase she had heard in one of the videos, now spoken by her in her own voice. After class, something happened that surprised her. Her teacher came up and said, "Anna, that was one of the clearest presentations I've heard today. How did you prepare?" Anna smiled and said, "I just practiced how to move from one idea to the next." That was the truth. She didn't try to impress anyone. She focused on being clear, and that clarity gave her confidence. I love this story because it shows how effective simple strategies can be. Anna didn't need advanced grammar or a perfect accent. She needed phrases that helped her organize her thoughts and speak with calm. When you use real listening, not just to understand, but to collect useful expressions, you're building a bridge between what you hear and what you say. And that bridge makes all the difference when you're under pressure. There's something else Anna discovered. Once she had those phrases in place, her fear of freezing disappeared. She knew how to start. She knew what to say between points. And she knew how to end. That structure gave her freedom. Instead of memorizing lines, she could focus on her message. She could speak to the class, not just perform in front of them. And because she had practiced speaking out loud every day, her voice didn't shake. Her words came naturally. This is what I want you to take from Anna's experience: the power of preparation that fits real life. You don't need to learn hundreds of words. You need to listen for the right ones, the ones that help you move forward in a conversation or a presentation. You need to speak those words out loud, Feel how they sound in your mouth and get comfortable using them. That's how confidence grows. Not from memorizing, but from practicing in a way that connects listening and speaking, thought, and expression. I still talk to Anna sometimes, and she tells me she now volunteers to present first in class. Not because she loves public speaking, but because she knows how to handle the moment. She knows what to say to begin, how to guide her listeners, and how to end with strength. That kind of transformation doesn't happen overnight, but it doesn't take years either. With the right kind of listening, a little daily practice, and a few solid phrases, you can feel the difference in just a few days. Anna did it. So can you. One of the biggest things that slows English learners down, and maybe you've experienced this too, is the habit of translating everything in your head. You hear something in English, and you try to find the meaning in your native language. Then you try to think of a reply in your own language, translate it into English, and then speak. That process creates a delay, and worse, it creates stress. Your brain is doing too much work all at once. And in a conversation, that delay can make you lose confidence, miss the moment, or feel like you're always behind. That's why one of the most important shifts you can make is to stop translating and start thinking directly in English. Now, I want to be gentle here. This habit is very common, and it's not your fault. Almost every language learner does this at some point. It's how we start. Translation helps us build vocabulary, understand grammar, and connect ideas. But once you reach a certain level, it starts to get in your way. It becomes a barrier between your thoughts and your voice. The goal is to build a direct connection between what you think and what you say, in English. So how do we do that? The good news is, it doesn't require any special tools or long study sessions. It just takes a new kind of practice, one that fits into your daily life. I always recommend starting with something small, describing your actions in English as you do them. This might sound simple, but it's incredibly powerful. If you're making coffee, say to yourself, "I'm pouring the water. I'm adding sugar. The cup is hot." Say it silently in your head or out loud if you can. What you're doing is teaching your brain to use English to observe the world. This exercise works because you're not thinking about grammar rules or vocabulary lists. You're connecting English directly to your actions, your senses, your daily reality. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes. After a few days, you'll start noticing that you don't need to stop and translate. You'll just think, "I'm hungry," or "I need to call my friend," and the words will come in English. That's fluency beginning to take shape, not perfect sentences, but direct thinking. Another helpful exercise is describing your surroundings. Let's say you're waiting at a bus stop. Look around and ask yourself, in English, what do I see? You might think, there's a man with a newspaper, or that dog is barking, or it's cold and cloudy today. Again, these are simple sentences. You're not trying to sound impressive. You're training your brain to connect language with what's real and immediate. That's what native speakers do all day long. And when you train that way, you're not just learning, you're becoming more fluent. One learner I worked with, Gabriel from Munich, used to tell me he felt slow every time he spoke English. He said it felt like there was a wall in his head. He could understand what people said, but when it was his turn to speak, everything got stuck. When I asked him to describe his thinking process, he said he was translating every sentence. So I suggested that for 1 week, instead of doing grammar exercises, he should practice thinking in English every time he walked to the store. He started saying things like, "I'm crossing the street. The light is red. I need tomatoes and cheese." At first, he said it felt silly, even strange. But after a few days, something shifted. His thoughts started coming faster, and when he had to speak with someone at the store, the words came more easily. Gabriel didn't change his vocabulary. He changed his thinking. That small adjustment helped him speak with less hesitation because his brain didn't need to translate anymore. And that's something I've seen again and again. When learners move from translation to direct thinking, their confidence grows quickly. They feel more in control because their thoughts and their words are working together. You can also use this strategy when watching videos or listening to conversations. Try to repeat short sentences out loud without translating them. If someone says, "I'll be there in 5 minutes," repeat it exactly the same way. Don't ask yourself how to say that in your language. Just copy the English. Let your brain get used to the sound, the rhythm, the flow. You're building familiarity, And that familiarity creates fluency. Sometimes people say to me, "But Julia, what if I don't know the words?" That's okay. Start with what you do know. If you don't know the word for something, skip it or find another way to say it. For example, if you can't remember the word for kitchen, you might say, "I'm walking to the place where I cook." It doesn't matter if it's not perfect. What matters is that you stay in English. That act of finding another way to say something, using the English you already have, is exactly what fluent speakers do. And here's something really important. Don't wait until you feel ready to think in English. You're ready now, with the words you already know. Even if your sentences are simple, even if you make mistakes, thinking in English is the fastest way to improve your speaking skills. You don't have to be fluent to start. You become fluent by starting. You can also use internal dialogues. For example, pretend you're explaining something to a friend in English. Maybe you're talking about a movie you watched or a problem at work. Create a short dialogue in your head. "He said this." Then I answered, "I didn't understand, so I asked again." These small mental conversations are powerful. You're practicing speech without needing another person. And when the real conversation happens, you've already trained your brain to find the words. If you do this consistently, just a few minutes a day, you'll start to notice the difference. You'll feel more fluent, not because you learned more words, but because you're using the ones you already have in a new way. You're not translating anymore. You're thinking in English. And that's the path to natural, confident speaking. Fluency is not about perfection. It's not about having every word. It's about being able to express yourself clearly and calmly, using the language you know. And the best way to do that is to stop depending on translation and start creating real, living thoughts in English. It takes practice, but it's worth it. Because every time you think in English, you're not just learning, you're becoming the kind of speaker who can think, feel, and communicate directly in the language. And that's a beautiful shift. One quiet thought at a time. One of the easiest and most effective ways to improve your English speaking confidence is to develop a quick listening routine that fits your daily life. You don't need hours of study or expensive courses. You just need a simple, focused plan that helps your brain absorb English naturally, and that trains your mouth to use the words and phrases you hear. Today, I want to share a routine you can start right now, even if you only have 10 or 15 minutes a day. This routine is designed to help you connect listening and speaking, so you'll notice your confidence growing with every practice session. Here's how it works. First, find a short audio clip that features real conversations. It can be a podcast, a dialogue from a language app, a short interview, or even a video clip from YouTube. The important thing is that the conversation sounds natural, and the language is something you can understand with some effort. Aim for something between 1 and 3 minutes long, short enough to listen to fully twice or 3 times without feeling overwhelmed. Once you have your clip, the first step is to listen without writing anything down. Just focus on understanding the general meaning. Don't worry about catching every single word or phrase. The goal here is to get the big picture, to know what the conversation is about. This helps your brain relax and absorb the sounds and rhythm of English without pressure. After you've listened once and have a sense of the conversation, listen to the clip again, this time with a notebook or your phone ready to write. Your goal is to pick out key phrases, expressions, or sentences that you think are useful. These are the phrases you want to learn and use later. Don't try to write down everything. Instead, focus on the parts that feel natural, practical, or interesting to you. For example, if someone says, "Could you repeat that, please?" Or, "I'm not sure, but I think," those are phrases worth noting because you can use them in your own conversations. Writing down these phrases helps your brain in 2 ways. First, it makes you slow down and focus more carefully on what you hear. That attention helps you notice details you might miss otherwise. Second, the act of writing activates a different part of your brain, reinforcing memory and making it easier to remember the phrases later. Now comes the most important part, speaking. Once you've written your phrases, listen to the audio one more time and repeat those phrases out loud. Don't just say them quietly in your head. Say them with your voice exactly as you hear them. Copy the pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. Try to sound natural, like you're actually having a conversation. If you're alone, it's okay to practice speaking aloud. This is your time to build muscle memory in your mouth and train your tongue to move in new ways. You can even practice shadowing. That means you say the phrase at the same time as the speaker, matching their pace and tone. Shadowing is an excellent technique because it helps you practice both listening and speaking at the same time. Your brain gets used to hearing and producing English in a connected way, and this helps you speak more fluently. If you're worried about making mistakes, remember that this is practice. It's a safe space to experiment. Don't worry about being perfect. The goal is to get comfortable with the sounds and expressions, so when you need to use them in a real conversation, they come out naturally. Let me share a quick example. I recently worked with Sophia from Paris. She told me she struggled to speak because she was always thinking about grammar rules and translating in her head. So I suggested this routine. Sophia started by listening to a 2-minute dialogue about ordering food in a cafe. She listened once to understand, then wrote down phrases like, "Could I have the menu, please?" and "What do you recommend today?" Then she practiced repeating these phrases out loud, matching the speaker's rhythm. After a few days, Sophia said she felt more confident speaking with waiters because she had those phrases ready in her mind and mouth. She wasn't guessing anymore. She was prepared. What's great about this routine is that you can adapt it to your level and interests. If you're a beginner, choose clips with simple language and slow speech. If you're more advanced, pick something a little more challenging. You can use this routine for any situation: travel, work, casual conversations, or even academic topics. The key is to make it consistent. 10 or 15 minutes every day is better than 1 hour once a week. Consistency builds momentum, and momentum builds confidence. Another tip I like to share is to keep a small notebook or a digital document where you collect your favorite phrases. Over time, you'll create your own personal phrase book. When you're in a conversation and don't know what to say, you can remember a phrase from your collection and use it. Having these ready-made phrases reduces stress and helps you keep the conversation going. If you want to make this routine even more effective, combine it with speaking practice. Find a language partner, join an English conversation group online, or even record yourself using the phrases. Speaking regularly, even in short bursts, helps you connect the listening practice to real communication. Remember, this routine isn't about memorizing scripts or perfect sentences. It's about noticing real language, practicing it naturally, and building your confidence step by step. By listening actively, writing key phrases, and repeating them out loud, you're training your brain and your mouth to work together. This connection is what helps you speak English more confidently and smoothly. So if you're ready to start today, take a few minutes to find a short English conversation that interests you. Listen once for meaning, listen again to write key phrases, then say those phrases out loud. Do this regularly, and you'll see progress faster than you expect. It's a simple, practical way to move from understanding English to speaking English with confidence. And as always, if you find this helpful, don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to the English Talk community so we can keep growing and learning together. I want to tell you about Sophie, a woman from Paris who had a journey many of you might relate to. Sophie decided to join a local English meetup group in her city. It was a small group of learners and native speakers who met weekly to practice English together. For Sophie, this was a big step. She knew English well, enough to understand, but speaking was a different story. At first, she barely spoke a word during the meetings. She felt shy and worried about making mistakes in front of others. So most of the time, she just listened quietly from the sidelines. Listening is important, of course, but Sophie realized she wasn't getting the chance to practice speaking. She wanted to be part of the conversation, but the fear of not finding the right words held her back. She told me, "I felt like I was always thinking, what if I say something wrong? What if people don't understand me?" Those worries stopped her from trying, even though she really wanted to improve. So we talked about how she could build her speaking confidence little by little. I suggested a simple daily practice she could do before each meetup, just 10 minutes a day of listening and speaking on her own. She agreed to give it a try. The key was to use short, real English audio recordings, like quick dialogues or stories, and then practice repeating phrases she heard, not perfect repetitions, just natural ones. Sophie chose clips that matched topics they might talk about at the meetup: ordering food, talking about hobbies, sharing opinions about movies. Each day, she listened once to understand, then repeated key phrases aloud. She didn't worry about grammar or pronunciation being perfect. Instead, she focused on feeling comfortable with the words, their rhythm, and the way speakers connected ideas. After a few days of this simple routine, Sophie noticed something important. When she arrived at the meetup, she had phrases ready in her mind. She didn't need to think so hard about how to start a conversation or respond. She found herself saying, "I like that idea," or "That's interesting," without freezing. It wasn't a sudden change, but a steady progress. She was speaking more because she was practicing more. One night, during a meetup, the group was sharing funny experiences they had while learning English. Sophie hesitated at first, but then she remembered a phrase she had practiced. "Let me tell you something funny that happened to me." She started telling a story about her first time trying to order coffee in English. She made a small mistake but laughed at herself and kept going. The group laughed with her, not at her, and that moment was a breakthrough. Sophie told me that this experience gave her a new feeling, a mix of pride and relief. She realized that speaking English isn't about being perfect. It's about sharing yourself, connecting with others, and having fun while learning. That meetup night gave her the push she needed to keep going. What I love about Sophie's story is how realistic it is. You don't have to speak perfectly to be part of the conversation. You just have to start somewhere. And that somewhere can be a small daily habit of listening and repeating. When you build confidence quietly, outside of pressure, it grows naturally. When you hear phrases often and practice saying them, they become your tools for real-life situations. Sophie's story also shows that confidence comes from experience. The more you speak, even in small ways, the easier it becomes. Those little wins, sharing a sentence, telling a story, making someone laugh, create momentum. Momentum that helps you speak more freely next time. If you feel shy or nervous about speaking English, think about Sophie. She started where many learners do, with fear and silence, but she didn't give up. She found a way to prepare, to build confidence step by step. And soon, she was not just listening at meetups. She was speaking, sharing, and connecting. I want you to remember that your voice matters, and it deserves to be heard. You don't need to wait until you feel ready. You become ready by practicing, by speaking, by showing up, even if it feels uncomfortable at first. The more you practice speaking aloud, even alone, the more your brain and mouth learn to work together. You become faster, clearer, and more confident. So if you're nervous about speaking in groups, try Sophie's approach. Spend a few minutes every day listening to short clips and repeating useful phrases. Use that practice to prepare for your next conversation or meeting. When you feel ready, try sharing a small story or opinion. Don't worry about mistakes. Focus on connection and expression. Over time, those small steps will add up. You'll find yourself speaking more, smiling more, and enjoying the process. And just like Sophie, you'll discover that speaking English can be fun, rewarding, and full of moments that make you proud. Keep practicing, keep listening, and keep speaking. Your confidence will grow with every word. One of the most important lessons I've learned, and I want to share this with you, is that confidence doesn't usually come before speaking. It comes through speaking. Many learners wait to feel ready before they start speaking English. They think, "I'll speak when my grammar is perfect," or "I'll talk when I know more vocabulary." But the truth is, you might never feel 100% ready. Waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect sentence, or the perfect word can keep you silent for a long time. And silence, in this case, doesn't build confidence. Speaking builds confidence. I want you to hear this clearly. Confidence grows when you speak before you feel ready. Even if you only know a few words or simple phrases, using them to communicate is the most powerful practice. It's like learning to swim. You don't start by reading books about swimming. You get in the water, maybe with a little fear, and you learn by moving your arms and legs. Speaking English is the same. You learn by doing, not by waiting. Let me tell you about a learner I met named Daniel, who lives in Berlin. Daniel was afraid of speaking English for years because he felt his sentences were too simple and his pronunciation wasn't good. He told me, "I'm not ready. I need more practice." But when he finally joined a conversation club, he forced himself to say a few sentences, even if they were short or not perfect. At first, it was hard. He made mistakes, mixed up words, and sometimes struggled to be understood. But the more he spoke, the easier it became. He started to notice something amazing. With each conversation, his mistakes mattered less and his ability to express himself grew. Daniel's experience shows that speaking is the bridge between knowing English and using English. If you only study grammar or vocabulary but don't practice speaking, you're missing the crucial part where your brain learns to connect words to communication. You might know thousands of words, but if you don't use them, they won't turn into confidence. Starting small is the key. You don't have to jump into long speeches or complicated debates. Begin with tiny conversations where the goal is simply to communicate, not to impress anyone. For example, when you meet someone new, you can say, "Hello, my name is," or "I like your shirt." These short sentences are powerful because they get you speaking. They get you used to sharing your thoughts in English. And each time you do this, your brain practices speaking under real conditions. That practice is what builds confidence. Another way to practice is to speak with yourself. It might sound strange, but talking to yourself in English, describing what you're doing, telling a story, or asking questions creates valuable speaking practice without pressure. When you speak alone, you can make mistakes freely and experiment with new words. This helps your brain build new pathways for English speech. And when you feel ready, you'll find it easier to speak with others. I want you to also think about what happens when you avoid speaking because you don't feel ready. You might understand English well when you listen or read, but you don't get the chance to test your skills in real conversation. Over time, that can create frustration and a feeling of being stuck. You know the words but can't use them freely. You might feel shy or worried about what others will think. That's normal, but it doesn't have to be permanent. The trick is to change your mindset about mistakes. Mistakes are not failures. They are signs that you are trying and learning. Every time you speak and make a mistake, your brain receives feedback. It adjusts, improves, and helps you avoid that mistake next time. So mistakes are actually valuable. They show progress. The more you speak, the faster your English improves. That's why it's better to speak now, even if your English is not perfect, than to wait for an imaginary moment when you are flawless. Let me share a practical tip I give to my students. Find a safe environment to speak early and often. This could be a language exchange partner, a small group of learners, an online chat room, or even a friendly barista where you order coffee in English. The idea is to practice without pressure and with people who understand you are learning. These small conversations might feel awkward at first, but they're the most important step towards fluency. One learner, Maria from Lisbon, told me she was afraid to speak English in public because she worried about making mistakes. She decided to start with something simple, ordering food in English at a cafe near her home. She practiced a few sentences in front of the mirror for a week. Then one day, she walked into the cafe and confidently ordered in English. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. The barista smiled and helped her with a few words. That small success made Maria want to speak more. She said, "It was the first time I felt like a real English speaker." That feeling is what builds confidence. Remember, fluency is not a race. It's a journey made up of many small steps. Each time you speak, even if it's just a few words, you're moving forward. You're telling your brain that you can use English to communicate in real situations. That's how real confidence grows. Not from waiting, but from doing. So don't wait until you feel ready. Start today with what you know. Use simple phrases, speak in short sentences, and practice as often as you can. The more you speak, the more your confidence will grow. You will surprise yourself with how quickly your skills improve when you stop waiting and start speaking. Speaking before you're ready is not just a challenge. It's a gift you give to yourself. It opens the door to real practice, real connection, and real progress. Every word you speak is a victory. And with each victory, your confidence grows stronger. You are learning, you are growing, and you are becoming a confident English speaker, one step at a time. One of the biggest worries I hear from learners around the world is about their accent. Many people feel that their accent is a problem, something that holds them back from speaking English confidently. They think, "My accent sounds strange," or "People won't understand me if I don't sound like a native speaker." I want to tell you something important today. Your accent is not a problem. It's a natural part of who you are. It's part of your identity, your culture, and your unique way of expressing yourself. Think about it for a moment. Even native English speakers have accents. Someone from London sounds different from someone from New York, and someone from Australia sounds very different from someone in South Africa. We all have accents. They show where we come from, and they make language rich and diverse. There is no one perfect way to sound in English. The idea that you must erase your accent to speak well is simply not true. In fact, trying to completely change your accent can slow down your progress and make speaking feel unnatural and stressful. What really matters when you speak English is clarity and confidence, not sounding like someone else. When you focus on being clear, choosing simple words, speaking at a comfortable pace, and making your message understandable, you become a better communicator. People want to understand you, not judge your accent. When you speak with confidence, your message becomes stronger, and your listeners pay attention to what you say, not how you say it. Let me share a story about a learner named Thomas from Lisbon. Thomas was very worried about his accent. He thought that because he didn't sound like a native speaker, people would not take him seriously. For a long time, he avoided speaking in English at work meetings and social events. But then, Thomas decided to change his mindset. Instead of trying to hide his accent, he started to focus on speaking clearly and sharing his ideas with confidence. He practiced short sentences and made sure to slow down when needed. Over time, he noticed something amazing. People responded positively to his ideas. They listened to him because he was confident, not because he sounded like a native speaker. Thomas's experience is common. When you focus on what you want to say and how you say it clearly, your accent becomes just a part of your voice, a voice that is uniquely yours. You bring your own rhythm, your own tone, and your own energy to English. That makes your speaking more authentic and engaging. There's also a big advantage to having an accent. It makes you memorable. Think about it. When you meet someone new, you remember their voice, their expressions, and the way they speak. Your accent is part of that personal signature. It can even be a conversation starter. I've heard many stories where learners use their accents to connect with others. People often ask about the learner's country, culture, or background. Those questions open doors to conversations that go beyond language learning. I want you to stop worrying about fixing your accent. Instead, use your voice as a tool for communication and connection. When you speak, imagine you're sharing your story, your thoughts, and your ideas with friends. Your accent adds flavor and character to that story. It shows that you have a unique perspective, shaped by your experiences and culture. Another thing to remember is that working on your pronunciation is different from trying to erase your accent. Improving pronunciation means learning how to make sounds clearly so that people understand you easily. It's about clarity, not imitation. You can practice pronunciation exercises, listen carefully to native speakers, and repeat phrases to develop clear speech without losing your accent. This balance is important because it lets you speak naturally while being understood. Some learners worry that their accent makes them look less professional or less intelligent. That's simply not true. Your accent does not define your knowledge or skills. What matters is how you express your ideas and how you communicate. When you speak confidently, your accent becomes a strength, not a weakness. I also want you to consider this. The world is becoming more global every day. English is used by people from all backgrounds and countries. There isn't a single standard accent that everyone must follow. In international workplaces, universities, and social groups, people hear and appreciate a wide variety of accents. Being able to understand and be understood by speakers with different accents is a valuable skill. So is speaking with your own authentic voice. If you ever feel self-conscious about your accent, try this simple exercise. Record yourself speaking English and listen to the recording. Notice the way you sound, and celebrate what makes your voice unique. Focus on your strengths, your clear pronunciation, your ability to express ideas, and your enthusiasm for speaking English. When you hear yourself with kindness, you'll start to feel more comfortable and proud of your voice. I want you to remember that your accent is a beautiful part of your English journey. It shows your courage, your culture, and your individuality. When you embrace your accent and speak with confidence, you inspire others to do the same. You become a role model for learners who may feel shy or uncertain. So don't be afraid to let your accent shine. Speak clearly, speak confidently, and let your personality come through every word you say. Your accent is not a barrier. It's your badge of honor. It tells the world where you come from and who you are. And when you speak English with confidence and clarity, nothing can stop you. One of the most important tips I want to share with you today is about the kind of English you choose to listen to. When it comes to improving your speaking skills and building confidence, listening plays a huge role. But not just any listening. What really makes a difference is listening to English that you actually enjoy. If the content is boring or too difficult, your brain tends to switch off. You stop paying attention and the words don't stick. But when you listen to something you like, something that grabs your interest, your brain stays active and learning happens naturally. Let me explain why this matters so much. Imagine you're trying to learn English by listening to a very complex lecture or a topic that doesn't interest you. It's like trying to read a book that you don't enjoy. You might push yourself through a few pages, but soon your mind wanders and you lose focus. That means your brain isn't absorbing the language the way it should. On the other hand, when you listen to a podcast about a hobby you love or a TV show that makes you laugh, your brain is curious and engaged. It wants to understand what's happening, so it works harder to catch the words, phrases, and expressions. That motivation to understand is powerful. It pushes you to listen more carefully, repeat phrases in your mind, and even try to say them out loud. When you enjoy what you listen to, you also want to share it. Maybe you tell a friend about a funny scene you heard, or you use a phrase you liked in a conversation. This natural desire to use language comes from enjoyment, not from pressure or obligation. I remember a learner named Luca from Rome who shared with me how this changed his English practice. Luca used to listen to traditional English lessons that were very grammar-focused. He found them boring and difficult, and after a while, he stopped listening altogether. Then, he discovered a podcast about soccer in English, a topic he was passionate about. Suddenly, listening didn't feel like a task. He looked forward to each episode and found himself repeating interesting phrases and expressions. He even started watching soccer matches in English and using what he learned to talk with his friends. Luca's speaking confidence improved not because he studied harder, but because he chose to listen to something he enjoyed. Choosing content at your level is just as important as choosing something you like. If you pick a video or audio that is too difficult, it can be frustrating and discouraging. You might understand only a few words and miss the overall meaning. That makes learning slow and tiring. But if you find something that matches your current level, you'll understand most of the language, and the new words will be easier to guess from the context. This way, your brain can focus on listening for meaning, pronunciation, and natural expressions, not just trying to decode every word. You don't have to limit yourself to one kind of content. Mix it up. Maybe one day you listen to a travel vlog, the next day a cooking show, and another day a simple story podcast. Variety keeps your learning interesting and exposes you to different vocabulary and accents. And when you listen regularly, your brain starts recognizing common phrases and sentence patterns, which helps your speaking become more fluent and natural. I encourage you to find your favorite English listening material today. Think about your interests, your hobbies, or something you've always wanted to learn more about. Use platforms like YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast apps to search for content in English that matches your level. Start small, just 5 or 10 minutes a day, and enjoy the process. When you listen to English you like, your motivation stays high. You don't feel like you're studying, you feel like you're enjoying. That feeling makes a huge difference because learning is more effective when it's fun. Your brain is more open to new sounds, new words, and new ways of expressing ideas. Another benefit of enjoying what you listen to is that it helps you remember the language better. When you connect words and phrases to emotions, stories, or interesting facts, they stick in your memory longer. For example, if you laugh at a funny phrase in a comedy show, you're more likely to remember and use it later. Or if you hear a beautiful sentence in a story that moves you, it stays with you. You might also notice that when you enjoy listening, you naturally imitate the way native speakers speak, their intonation, their rhythm, and their expressions. This imitation is a key part of sounding more natural and confident in English. It's something that happens almost without effort when you're engaged and having fun. If you ever feel bored or frustrated with your English practice, stop and think about what you're listening to. Ask yourself, do I like this? Is it interesting? Is it at the right level? If the answer is no, it's time to try something new. Your English learning should feel like a journey you enjoy, not a chore you avoid. So, make a list of English content that excites you. Set aside a few minutes each day to listen with curiosity and pleasure. Use that time to repeat phrases you like, try new words, and imagine yourself using them in real conversations. When you build your listening practice around what you enjoy, you'll find that speaking English becomes easier, more natural, and yes, more confident. Remember, learning English is not just about hard work. It's about smart work. Choosing. Enjoyable listening materials is one of the smartest ways to help your brain learn and your speaking skills grow. When you listen happily, your brain listens better, and your speaking follows naturally. Let your enjoyment be the engine of your English journey. Today, I want to give you a simple but powerful challenge. It might seem small, but trust me, it's a huge step toward building your English speaking confidence. Here's what I want you to do. Say just one sentence out loud in English today. That's it. One sentence. You can describe something as simple as what you had for breakfast this morning, or maybe what you plan to do today. You could talk about the weather outside your window, or even a feeling you have right now. The sentence doesn't need to be complicated or perfect. The most important thing is to say it clearly and out loud. You might wonder, can just one sentence really make a difference? The answer is yes. Speaking English, even one small sentence, is an act of courage. It tells your brain, I am ready to use this language. That small act breaks the silence that often holds people back. It's like opening a door that leads to more speaking opportunities. When you speak one sentence today, it builds a little more confidence that helps you say 2 sentences tomorrow and 3 the day after. It's a step-by-step journey, and every step counts. Let me share why this challenge is so important. Many learners wait for the perfect moment to speak English. They want to know enough vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation before they try. But waiting can keep you stuck. Confidence doesn't come from knowing everything first. It comes from using what you know. Speaking one sentence is a way to start using your knowledge. It's your personal invitation to practice, to make mistakes, and to grow. You can do this challenge anywhere and anytime. Maybe you're sitting at your kitchen table having breakfast. Say, I am eating toast with butter. Or if you're going for a walk, say, the sky is blue today. If you're at work or school, describe your plans. I will study English this afternoon. The key is to speak out loud so your mouth and brain practice working together. Hearing yourself speak helps you become more comfortable and confident with your voice. Some of you might feel shy or nervous about speaking alone. That's completely normal. Speaking out loud feels strange at first, especially if you're used to practicing English silently in your head or by reading. But that's why this challenge is so helpful. It gently pushes you to use your voice and get comfortable with the sounds of English. Over time, speaking aloud will feel natural, and your confidence will grow. You don't have to do this challenge alone either. If you want, share your sentence with a friend or family member who understands your English goals. Maybe send a voice message or say it during a conversation. Sharing your progress with someone else adds motivation and support. But if you prefer, just speak your sentence to yourself in a quiet space. The important thing is to take that first step. Also, remember that your sentence doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry about grammar or pronunciation mistakes. This is practice, not a test. Each time you speak, your brain learns and improves. Mistakes are part of learning, and they show you're trying. The more you practice, the more natural your English will become. To help you get started, I'll give you a few examples. Sentences that are simple and useful. You can use them exactly or change them to fit your day. I am drinking coffee right now. The weather is sunny and warm. I like to listen to music in English. Today, I will practice speaking for 5 minutes. My favorite color is blue. Try saying one of these aloud today, or make your own sentence. It can be about anything in your daily life. The goal is to connect your thoughts to your spoken English in a simple, confident way. This small daily habit creates big changes over time. Speaking one sentence today is like planting a seed of confidence. With regular practice, that seed grows into fluency, comfort, and the ability to express yourself freely in English. So here's my final encouragement. Don't wait for the perfect moment, the perfect sentence, or perfect pronunciation. Start with one sentence. right now or as soon as you can today. Speak it clearly and feel proud of yourself for taking action. This simple challenge is your first step toward becoming a confident English speaker. Remember, every big journey starts with a small step. Your journey to confident English speaking begins with just one sentence. Take that step today and keep moving forward, one sentence at a time. You've got this, and I'm here cheering you on every step of the way.